good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for making it on a very very busy evening here. Cricket matches are happening, tennis matches are happening, swearing-in ceremonies are happening, all kinds of things are happening and then we've got this wonderful book that Friyana is going to present to us. So we're really looking forward to that. Just as Friyana, I'm going to give a very brief introduction, and please feel free to add more. Um, Friyana, as you can see, is our youngest probably book club member. She's been a student of Mohini's and did her masters from St. She's now working in Bajaj Markets in digital marketing, in content and communication, and she loves writing poetry and reading books. So that's a little bit about Friyana. Friyana, over to you. Waiting to listen to this review on this book. Go ahead.
But
Yeah, yeah.
thank you
Ready? We're
for the
ready. Go ahead.
introduction.
Yeah.
Okay. I shall share my screen.
And while she's sharing her screen, if everybody can put themselves on mute, that would be great.
Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Perfect. So, hi everyone. Today I'm taking you guys through one of the very few non-fiction books, and I'm somebody who likes more of the uh, you know classic romantic books or a existential book or some sort of fiction going on. But it is very rarely that a non-fiction captures you the way this one book does, and I'm very proud to present it at the book club today. So this is Van Gogh's Woman by Derek Fell. This book was actually a gift to me on my birthday from a friend of mine who knows that I admire Van Gogh a lot. And let's start with a quick look into Van Gogh. Right. So Van Gogh was born on 30th March 1853. He lived in a farming community in southern Holland. He was the eldest among his five siblings of three brothers and two sisters. Uh, Van Gogh was really deep into theology, and he loved learning more and more about his religion and Christianity, and so he was a very devoted person, if you were to say. And he was the son of a very depressed mother and a very strict pastor father, and that will also sort of play into why, how, and what led to Vincent sort of losing his mind towards the end of his life. Let's look at it. So, first, let's see what is Vincent diagnosed with. So, Vincent van Gogh, a painter known for his colors, known for the life he brought to his paintings, was actually clinically mad. So, some things that he's been diagnosed with based on his letters, based on the other diagnoses that he received during his lifetime, are that he had manic depression, he went through bipolar disorder, and that he may have faced replacement child syndrome. Now, all of these we will cover slowly throughout the presentation so that you understand what I mean by each of these terms, right? The very first one is Anna Van Gogh. The first woman in Vincent's life was his own mother. Um, she gave birth to a stillborn baby whose name was also Vincent. And so Vincent was named after his stillborn elder brother. And what is sad is that this may have led to Vincent having to fill in the shoes of a perfect child that the mother imagined at some point, which is something that Vincent was not able to do. And he was under this constant pressure, and then he had this constant reminder of a dead uh, person right in front of him, because Vincent, the stillborn baby's grave was sort of right outside of their house, right in the garden. So every day he would, in the passing, look at a grave with his own name, his own birth date. So Vincent was born exactly a year after his stillborn elder brother, which is not something very nice for a very young kid to go through as a child. So it could have led to the foundations of his trauma. Another thing that his mother did was that he would take him every Sunday to the grave and sort of thank the Lord for reincarnating her son again in the form of the live Vincent. And so, as per as per the book, the way Derek Fell writes is that she saw Vincent as the second coming, the incarnation of the dead child that she idolized and preserved in her subconscious. So Vincent had to now fill in the shoes of a child that she had idolized. So a child, when they start puking or they start vomiting, they start crying, throwing tantrums at night, keep you awake the whole day, start developing a sort of a personality. All of these things are something that a perfect child, the pedestal of the high ground where she had held the dead child, Vincent could not uh, sort of match that because he was just himself. And that is one of the reasons why we think that Vincent, this is sort of like the start of his madness, and that came in very early. The next woman in Vincent's life was his first love affair when he was 20 years old. It was Eugenie Lawyer, where she was the daughter of the landlord, and Vincent fell in love with her, and they had a short stint, after which he confessed she had been in love with another with a former uh, tenant in the same room, and which broke Vincent's heart. But then, when Vincent looked back at that entire episode in his hindsight, he said, "What kind of love was it that I felt when I was 20? It is difficult to define. Foolish, wrong, exaggerated, proud, rash. For in love, one must not only give, but also take. Reversing it, one must not only give, but also take." So, what he could have felt in that moment is that he had been giving too much and he was not able to receive it. And this is something that Eugene sort of helped him realize. But another fascinating thing about his tale with Eugene is that he also was very close with Eugene's mother, who had seen life, who had seen a lot of difficulties in life, and sort of he had grown a tighter bond with her mother rather than with Eugene. So a lot of the evidence suggests that he was not upset because he had to break up with Eugene, but he was more upset because he would not get to see Eugene's mother again. Okay, moving on. Kiwas. Kiwas was the first cousin of Vincent, and she was recently widowed. She had come to visit uh, his family, and in that time, she would accompany Vincent in his adventures to go paint and look at the world. And then, but she was always haunted by the ghost of her husband. She was all she it was very recent that she had lost her husband, so very naturally she was still in that sort of melancholy and that sort of depression, where she was still constantly thinking about her dead husband in that sense. And she was alleviating that pain and sorrow by going on an artistic journey where she would quietly knit and Vincent would just paint the landscape. And the thing is that when Vincent tried to take this a step further, he wanted to marry Kivos. He asked her hand in marriage, and she rejected. And she rejected it very, very vehemently, where she said, "No, never, never." And these words may have just stuck with him too much. And then, following that, we see uh, Vincent trying to convince his family for the marriage and convince Kivos's family as well for the marriage, where he is seen very desperately trying to have conversations with his mother, his father, Kivos's father at one point, where he's just really trying to make her understand, and he's not able to take the rejection that Kivos has handed it to him, which is a very key factor that you will notice, where Vincent is not very good at handling rejection. As the book suggests, he had some aggressive tendencies as a child. He used to get irritated very easily, And all of this sort of started building up when he was faced with rejection again and again in his life, which is a notion that you will see again and again. But when it came to Key Was, he said these very, very, very beautiful words for her, where he said that she and no other, which will sort of become like a tagline whenever you think about Key Was. And so, uh, in a letter to Theo also, Theodore, his brother, the one we all know, knew Vincent the best. Uh, Even Theo tried to console Vincent and ask him to, sort of let go of the idea of marrying Kivos and move ahead in his life. And in this very sweet letter, he's trying to explain his brother what it means to fall in love. And he says, "You will get further in the world, stand more firmly in your shoes, be a man of more willpower, energy, and character, obtain more knowledge of men and experience, have higher spirits, more buoyance and courage, take sides more decidedly, be more averse to halting between two opinions, to wavering, oscillation, etc., than you have until now, as soon as you have somebody to whom she and no other then applies." So he's trying to explain Theo what it means to be in love. He's trying to explain Theo what it means to actually have somebody very, very significant in your life. And in this entire episode, he's trying to justify his love for Kivos to her, his own family. Basically, everyone is at odds against him. Until he visits Kivos's family, he talks to her father. Her father also very vehemently rejects it, and Kivos rejects, and her father also rejects. After which, her father will he will put his hand over a flame and let it burn, and he will say, "Okay, I will stay in love with her until my hand burns out." And then the father has a good idea of just throwing water on on the flame, just putting out the flame so that he does not burn his hand more, but he does get a severe burn from that incident. And then so after being rejected again and again and again, he sort of moved on, and he left the town, decided to spend more time elsewhere. So, right. The next stop, he finds himself in the midst of prostitutes. He leaves Holland. He leaves Eton, where he's born, and then he moves to another town where he meets. He gets into a lot of. Uh, he gets into the company of prostitutes, and he spends a lot of time with them. And then he uses this very endearing term for them. He calls them sister. He says they are women, they need to be respected, and thus he would call them sister as he would any other lady. In the midst of that, he finds this prostitute who has been left, uh, probably for the dead in a certain sense, where she is suffering from a lot of sexual ailments. She has a child, she's pregnant, and she's basically she's basically having a very hard time. And Vincent wants to be a sort of like a knight in shining armor, somebody who wants to protect and help, and decides to step in for Cian and asks her to stay in his house, in his hut, to keep her warm during the winters. And meanwhile, all she had to do was model for him, and he would paint her. And that is how he lived for a certain period of time. Um, until after some time he decided to marry Cian, which was looked down upon by society for obvious reasons. And also, the church would turn his back on him. His family would again try to get him out of this marriage because it was unconventional at the time. And still, Vincent sort of persists, and he just wants to marry this girl because he wants to give her a good life, and he wants to give her children a good life. You will see him painting Cian extensively. You will see her in a very important painting known as the Sorrow, where you will see Cian completely naked, with her head and with her knees to her chest and her head down in a very natural position. And it sort of shows the sick and the tiredness that Cian must be feeling at the moment. You will also so later on, as he has this relation, he's married Cian, he's lived with her. Um, the 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 child that she was pregnant born is born. Vincent finds himself attached with the child also. He does not differentiate between his child and someone else's. He brings up the child as his own until slowly and eventually the relation starts getting bad. They start having fights frequently. They start going through ups and downs in their relationships, and you will have Theo coming in, visiting Vincent again and again, asking, looking at the mess that their marriage has become, or looking at how she's not able to help Vincent the way he would like her to. And Vincent will always take her side and say, no, 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 she's never seen good. So how would she know what is good for me? And in that uh, in that sort of way, he tries to save his marriage. He tries to save the time he spent with Cian, until one day he realizes that it is getting too much for him, and he decides to leave her. It is a big step that he takes, but he decides to leave her at the end. And he sort of walks away from the children and Cian, right? But when he takes her in, he says this: what is the more cultured, more sensitive, more manly, to deserve a woman or concern oneself with one who has been deserted? What really strikes me about this comment is the way he puts the words sensitive and manly in the same phrase. And then he also sort of shows the kind of compassion he does uh, for a prostitute, and treats her with the utmost respect as much as he can. The way psychoanalysts and psychologists have viewed it in the book is that because uh, he has had this syndrome of the replaced child, where he has to be ideal. He always constantly keeps seeking out women who have a ghost or a past that is haunting them, something he needs to improve, something he can take them out of. This you will see in the case of his own mother, in a certain sense, where she is still having the ghost of the child behind her. You will see it with Ki Was, who had her dead husband. You'll see with Cn, who is sickly and almost left for dead, with pregnancy and syphilis. So you will see this constantly, that Vincent constantly tries to be the bigger person, try to help people, try to um, act as the knight in shining armor. Right. The next woman that entered Vincent's life was Margaretha Carolina Begman. Now, Vincent, after he broke up with CN, he came back home, decided to live with his parents again. And over there, he met his neighbor, Margaret. Margaret was one of three sisters, and the three sisters were constantly competing on who would get married first, who would have a child first. And Margaret had taken a very keen interest in Vincent. Uh, once, they would, go serve the underprivileged children. They would go on art expeditions, and they sort of had this very tight knit friendship, which later will turn into romance and love. Um, when Margaret went to her family and asked them that she would like to marry Vincent, they very vehemently rejected, because Vincent had already had the entire episode with Kivos. He had the rumor of him being with a prostitute on the streets was also out there. So nobody wanted to sort of give their child to him. So you will see that Vincent was trying hard to get their approval, but they did not give him the approval, until one day Vincent and Margaret were walking, and Margaret will just take out this poison from her pocket and just drink it. And she would just fall at Vincent's feet, and Vincent will try his best to take her to the hospital, get her treated. Um, and after all of that, after the entire suicide attempt, he was confused. He was utterly confused because he did not know what was happening, and everything was happening too fast, until she was sent to a different town to get treated and get better. And the doctor had said that it would take her about a year or so to get well. And after that, again, he was being blamed for drugging her, for giving her poison, for her suicide attempt. So there was a lot of things going on where he was being accused of something he had not done. And in this, he has an altercation with his father where he slaps his father. and after that he sort of will leave Margaret, and he will leave the house and he will go away to Paris. So 9 months after Margaret's suicide, Vincent's father passed away. But one thing that Vincent's father did was that, regardless of his tough exterior, he always had some compassion for Vincent, and he had made it known to his brother and brothers, sisters, and mother, where he would constantly wish him well for his art success. He would keep feeling worried about how Vincent will cope with all the emotional stress that he was going through in this time. After which he had a stroke one day and then he passed. Stien, the young peasant girl. Now, Stien was one girl he did not have an affair with, uh, very luckily. What happened was that he would paint her again and again. So, if you have seen one of his very famous painting, The Potato Eaters, you will notice this young peasant girl sitting there. That girl is Steele. He painted her extensively as a model because he respected her in that sense, and they had a kindred friendship until she was having a baby. And the priests and the pastors and everybody thought that Vincent was the father because he spent so much time with her. Until Vincent found out that it was one of the people from the mission who had actually impregnated the girl and would not take the responsibility for it. And again, you will see Vincent was again blamed for something he had not done. And he was again rejected by the community, by people. And so he again left the place and started moving on. So after all of these episodes, he finds himself in Montmartre, which was sort of like the hip town of the days. You would go there to forget about the world. It was like nirvana of sorts. Uh, it was like the Las Vegas of 1800s, if you would call it. You would go there for prostitution, you would go there for brothels, you would go there for art, architecture, you would go there to sort of have the party life, if you would call it. And Vincent was settling in very well with new people. He was meeting these impressionist painters for the first time, and he was learning new techniques. He was going to these brothels, he was going to parties, he was going to cafes, and he was having quite the social life. Over there, he meets Agostina Segatori. So she and Vincent had a very small affair, which is not much spoken about in his letters. But what we do know is that after just a small period, he and Agostina got into this bad fight where she locked him out of his house, and uh, his paintings and all of that was sort of just still inside the house, and he had to fight and get in and take his paintings and his uh, other stuff and then move out. So they had this altercation, and in one of his letters to Theo, he says that as for La Segatori, I still feel affection for her, and I hope that she too still feels some for me. But at the moment, she's in a difficult situation. Next, the next part is going to be a little longer. Vincent, uh, after his entire time in Montmartre, he decides that he wants to create this euphoric world for all artists, all struggling artists to come stay with him, get back on their feet and then move into society. So he wants to create this sort of a sheltered community in southern Holland, and for that, he reaches out to one of his most beloved acquaintances that he makes over time in Montmartre, which is Gogh. Now, Gogh was exactly like Vincent, but at the same time, completely the opposite of Vincent. They had a very good friendship. However, a lot of psychoanalysts, do interpret their friendship as having a homosexual relationship, where Vincent will later paint two chairs, the Vincent's chair and Goggins' chair, and you will see Goggins' chair is more in a feminine sort of a setting, whereas Vincent's chair is a more masculine setting in a court of sorts. And they've drawn many connections between the two paintings and between what is known of both of these through letters exchanged by Vincent, by Gauguin, by others. So there is this idea that Gauguin and Vincent shared a very, very deep sort of a connection with one another. And one bad habit that Gauguin had, which he passed on to Vincent, was visiting brothels almost every single day. So they would often share women, share passions, and one of these women was Rachel, and Rachel was a teen. She was, I think, 16 or 17 of age, and she would spend nights with both of these men. And while this is going on, Gauguin and Vincent constantly keep having arguments while they're staying together in Vincent's house. So because they had moved in together to form this sort of society, they would constantly have debates on what it should be like, what is the right way to paint, what is the new ideology which makes more sense. And you will see Gauguin also writing in his letters how Vincent admired the painters that he hated, and Gauguin admired the painters that Vincent hated. And you will see that there was this constant tension rising. And in one of these episodes, Vincent, sorry, Gauguin gets angry with Vincent, and Gauguin leaves the home. And Vincent is again in a fear of abandonment. He feels like he's going to be abandoned by somebody, and he takes a dagger of sorts and a blade, and he charges at Gauguin outside the house. But then he stops midway and he turns back. And Gauguin is a bit perplexed by this violent behavior. And then, after some time, when he goes back home, he sees that there's a trail of blood which is going up to his bedroom, and he finds Vincent bleeding profusely. So when he asks about the story, people tell him that he cut off his ear and he went to the brothel and he presented the ear to Rachel. And the words he said was, "Keep this object carefully." And this right here is a sort of a manic episode where because he was so angry or so unstable, he wanted to harm something, but he would not harm somebody else. He would direct the harm to himself, where he would cut off his ear and he would present it to Rachel as a safety. A lot of people have dug into this on why he may have done this. Some said he had a sort of issue in his ear, or you know a sexual disorder which may have gone to his head, or there are multiple conjectures. But one thing that remains for certain is that this manic episode really will change Vincent's life, because after this, he's admitted in a hospital at Arles, where he stays for the next couple of days, and then he recovers, he comes out, and then he again has these continuous episodes for 2 3 days straight that he's kept in the hospital. And Theo is called from Paris to look after Vincent. After a few days, Vincent will come back to his normal self and he will ask what happened. He does not remember any of the episodes, he does not remember what he's done. And he keeps blaming it on alcohol and other things rather than the actual cause, which is rejection and abandonment. His main fears in the time. So after this, Van Gogh was admitted at Saint Remy. He himself admitted himself there. And while she's there, a new woman enters his life. And this woman is not in the romantic sense. She is in the most sisterly way you could imagine. And one of the only people who may have said to keep Vincent alive for the rest of the years that she did. Uh, Her name is Johanna Van Gogh, the wife of Theo. And Johanna was a very wise woman, very beautiful. She was very smart. She accepted Theo's proposal after, I think, twice or thrice, because she had been in love with another man. But after that relation sort of ended completely, Joanna decided that it was more important to move on with her life, and she accepted Theo's proposal. And Joanna writes extensively to Vincent, keeps reminding him that his art does bring a difference in the world, it brings a difference to her. And this is one of the first letters that she sends Van Gogh when he is in Saint Remy. It is her first letter to him. And what she says here is, I was always thinking, oh, at present you haven't yet got the courage to write about everything to Vincent. But now we are truly, really brother and sister. I should be so very happy if you knew me a little too. If possible, loved me a little. And Vincent does exactly that. He loves her. Uh, until the day he died, I think the one woman that made a major positive impact in Vincent's life would have been Joanna. And Joe has his paintings in his house in her house. She will constantly write to tell him about her child, her husband, how things have been going on in the house. She will even write him a heartfelt letter right before she goes into labor to tell him that she's about to go on an adventure and she's nervous about the health of the child, about her husband, but she loves her husband too much, and that Vincent should be the one to tell him if they ever have a fall apart. So all her fears when they were getting too much for her, the first person she wrote to was Vincent. And Joanna later will also, after Vincent's death, go on to translate all his letters from Dutch to English and French to English. And then she will also, she will translate them from French to Dutch. And then while she was translating them to English, she unfortunately passed away. She also took it upon herself to sell Van Gogh's works, uh, where she will hold a lot of exhibitions for Van Gogh, and she would become a sort of an art dealer later on in life after Theo's death. Um, the next woman, and I think the last of his love affairs, was Margaret Gachet. So after staying at Saint Remy for a year, um, Vincent sort of started feeling very stuffy, and he had no social contact with people. He was almost like he was inside a prison, and his health seemed to deteriorate a little while he was inside. And so he decided to sort of step away from the institution and go live with a doctor that the family knew. And Gasher was not ordinary doctor. He had very, very high profile cases with him. This included many impressionist painters like Cézanne and Renoir and Manet. And and then if you come on the writer side, Edgar Allan Poe, you have Ernest Hemingway, Scott Fitzgerald. So he had a lot of high profile cases coming to him, and one of them was also Van Gogh. Van Gogh would go live with Dr. Gachet for 2 months, 2 or 3 months, started on May, and he passed away in July. So, yeah, 3 months. And initially, he got along very well with Dr. Gachet, but eventually things started to get a little sour. And the reason for that was Gachet's daughter, Margaret Gachet, who had fallen in love with Vincent. And Vincent also liked Margaret. And you will see that he was again when he sorry yeah you will see that Margaret was very persistent on having to marry Vincent, but because of her father's wishes she would back off. Now, one major reason that people believe that Vincent may have passed away was an altercation between Vincent and Dr. Gachet, where he would very vehemently reject him the way Kivos's father did. And, he, as per some records, it states that Vincent had a gun which he pointed at Gachet and was in one of those aggressive manic episodes, but then he will retreat. And 2 days later, he will shoot himself in the stomach. And so this sort of constant repetition of aggression. And again, this is one reason. The another reason that people believe that Van Gogh may have died was rejection from Joe and Theo, because at the time Theo's son was very, very ill, and Theo was about to take away the financial allowance that he used to give to Vincent, because Vincent was not earning his entire life. His entire life, Theo had looked after him financially. So when that financial foundation was sort of being pulled away from him, he felt a bit lost, and he thought that his art would not. He could not go on doing art and persevere in his passions. So he decided to step away. And the thing is, while he had this constant fear, Joe had assured him at one point that, his allowance won't be cut. Maybe it would be reduced, but it wouldn't definitely be taken away completely. But there was a lot going on at the same time. The fear of having his funds taken away from him, the fear of Margaret not becoming his wife again, and he will write about this to his sister Will, who also was a main part of Vincent's life, just like Theo. She would share letters with him, and while he was having these letters being exchanged with Will, he will tell her how much the definitions of love, and they will change over time. Initially, he told her about the germination of love, the power of germination that love has to hold somebody together, to prosper. And then he will call it a sort of a disease which slowly drains you away. And that sort of change in motive sort of also shows you the trajectory in which Vincent's life went. And in the end, he will shoot himself in the stomach in a field of wheat. And another thing that is complicated is that people often question why Vincent didn't shoot himself in the head when he could have very well done so. Um, but he decided to shoot himself in the stomach. A theory for that is that people believe that the feeling of anxiety, of abandonment, of regret, all the negative emotions that you ever have, sort of are felt the most in your stomach. And that was the root cause of it. So maybe his last act of violence was more to take out that feeling of anguish rather than to kill himself. So, more than a suicide, it could have been an accident. But at the end, Vincent was taken back to his room. Theo will come to his side. He will stay with him for the entire day. And then he will sort of die. So, what is the reason to Vincent's madness? One is definitely rejection. The amount of times he was rejected for his art, for his love life, for his affairs, all of that sort of contributes to his madness. And also the fact that he was not accepted in the larger scheme of things. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Friyana. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Uh, it's interesting. When I think the little bit that I know about Vincent Van Gogh and all that I've read about was really about three women that were there. One, of course, was his mother, and then there was Joe. And the what I knew about Joe was that she sort of took on to promote Vincent Van Gogh after Theo's death, because it was Theo's mission to make his brother popular and to promote his art, and she carried that forward. But I didn't know about all the other women. My God, he was quite a charmer, the guy. Okay, let's open it out for any discussions. Anybody has any questions, any comments? Please go ahead. Yes, Latika.
Gogh is a very important artist in the history of French 19th century painting. And here itself in Pune, we all got to see Van Gogh 360, an immersive exhibition, and so on, which we did. Uh, Normally, one reads books or one sees paintings without necessarily knowing the background of the author. We don't always go into his personal life. Now, here is a book that you are discussing, which speaks of his personal life. Do, do you find anything in the book that tells you, or did you gather anything from the book when you were reading it about why he painted the way he did? His intense, complex, and very sorry personal life, did it have anything to do with the kind of painting he did? Because the painting is what, the connection I have with any artist would be the artwork that I see, not his personal life. Now, in this case, we've come to know his personal life because you've spoken of it through the book. Did you see anything in the book that tells you why he painted the way he did?
Yes. So in the initial parts of his life, he had not exactly come in touch with Impressionism as a art form. So you will see a lot of uh, very neat sketches. So so by the time I think until he met Cian, his drawings were more of the sort of the realist sort, where he would draw the woman as she looked, or with the strokes as she was. Later, when he comes into contact with Impressionism, when he goes to Montmartre, that is when you will see a lot of bold use of colors. So the night at the cafe, or the starry night over the Rhone, all of these paintings are from that time. And then when you will see him sort of go into Saint Remy, where he's at his lowest in life, you will see uh, a completely different sort of painting from him, where you will see the Starry Night, where the use of color becomes much more intense. The subject also becomes much more intense because there's less of people, less of flowers. It has become much more about the night, about so it sort of does carry some sort of a depressing connotation to it. And then when he comes out of Saint Remy's, he will paint again bold colors of landscapes and mountains, because that is the time. Those last 3-4 months was supposed to be the time where he was at his healthiest, mentally and physically, where he did not have any strokes, he did not go under any manic episodes, where he uh, was out there painting much more. And at that time, you will see a much more bolder use of brighter colors, where you will see the wheat fields and so on and so forth. So I think as far as the impact of his personal life with his art goes, I think the most of it, the major chunk of it that you will see is during his stay at Saint Remy, where he was really, really at a low point in life, where his only source of communication to the outer world was through letters with Joe. So that is the part where he created some of his most intense paintings, and those paintings were actually the ones which got him the fame that he has today, like Starry Night, the Red Vineyard, the um, blossoms the almond blossoms. All of these paintings, which actually got him the recognition that he has, came in during his most lowest time, and that is something you discover through this book.
Well, the Starry Nights is so emphatic as a work. It almost feels like there's a storm brewing inside him, which he's brought out on.
One is that if you have too many women in your life, you're naturally you'll go mad. The second one
But
is
you'll be
that
a great painter, Gautam. You'll be a great painter at the end
yeah.
of
So
it.
it is essential to have too many women in your life to be a good painter. And the third is that women need the man to listen to them continuously. So you might as well just give them your ear.
Brilliant. What can one say after that, huh? Okay, very down to earth, mundane kind of question, Priyana. On very general lines, there's a school of criticism which believes that once a work of art is out there, you should not talk biography and contemporary context and all that. It's out there in the world against a background of eternity and should be evaluated and judged on its own, right? Now, with Van Gogh, we've taken a heavily biographical stance here. So I'm just asking you, generally speaking, do you think do you think it adds to your understanding of a work of art if you go the biographical route, or does it distract from the point? What would you say?
I, on a very personal opinion, I feel that knowing more about the person who's created the art adds to it, because you know exactly, not exactly, but you can at least understand to a certain extent what was happening in this person's head when they created a work of art. So Like, for example, I'll be very honest with you. I would love to know what was going on in Edgar Allan Poe's heads when he was writing his work of arts, because they are out of this world. Or I would love to know what Dostoevsky was thinking when he was writing such depressing works. So a person's life does bleed into their art, and there is a certain sort of like we poets and writers like to call it a muse. Uh, the artists like to call them the models, but there is something which stirs the water of your creativity, and I think
And can we also say that, there's tremendous human curiosity, isn't there?
yeah,
I mean,
there
then,
is.
and when someone has lived such a, if I may use the word, colorful life, he has lived such a colorful life. I mean, one is intrigued and one wants to know. And I would even say that getting to know all the ins and outs of Van Gogh's life um, adds to your appreciation of the art, because you know the period that it's been created, you know what he was going through, and it all brings it all so much more closer and makes it more comprehensive.
The opposite
Also,
argument would be that
you
once
understand the
I
whys and therefore.
But don't you think, Mohini, that if you and I and all of us were to know his life instead of knowing only his art, and then we associate the art that we see with the life he lived, then we all of us would have the same perspective. We wouldn't all of us have different perspective, no?
No, of course we would still see it differently, we would interpret it differently. But my basic question was about um, the importance to be given to biographical detail when you evaluate an artist, right? Where literature is concerned, earlier works of criticism used to be all biographical. And then later, this trend of critical analysis and close reading of the text and all that came in. So I think that's what's really important. But biographical detail adds to a satisfaction of human curiosity, I would say.
at the same time, it impinges adversely on the freedom of interpreting the art to uh, my interpretation. Now that I know Van Gogh was like this, like that, like that, when I look at the painting, I don't have the freedom to interpret the painting objectively the way my mind would like to see it as.
You would have the freedom, except that knowing his
No, you can't
background, that
help
will
it.
interfere with you have the freedom, but then that comes as an interference in your interpretation, I suppose.
I just feel
You can't ignore it once you know it. Yes, Paki.
yeah, I just feel that a work of art, I agree with you, it should be judged on its own merit. But when you know about background of the the painter, it adds a sort of depth of your understanding of what through at the moment when he painted it. He was going through a very depressing period when he painted those potato harvesters. And later on, you see the influence of all the impressionist painters that he met, Cézanne, Gogh. But he developed, even though he interacted with these people, he developed his own unique style. His brushwork was entirely his own. You know, though you can say Starry Night with those worlds and all that also would reflect his very troubled state of mind. I think that's only adding uh, layer to it, which does not exist in an original work of art.
Well, take someone like
Reflects,
John Keats. Keats
yeah,
wrote his odes towards the end of his life, I think. But the beauty of those odes, even the Ode to
yes,
Autumn, which was his last, did not tell us anything about his passing away at the age of 26 and what he was going through and his tuberculosis and all that. It was completely separate. So obviously, in the case of this artist, you find his life actually, in a sense, defining his work in some way. But this is not necessarily the case with everybody.
yeah.
in today's time, you are going to know everything about every artist
Yeah.
that's going to be out there on social media. And so, I think we've lost that opportunity of trying to look at art only,
True.
for what it is and without knowing the artist. Impossible.
True.
Anybody
Uh,
else? Any
I,
other
I would
comment?
like a little information about Derek Fell, who has written this book. Um, who was he, and what motivated him to write about the women of Gogh's life? I mean, Vincent van Gogh's life.
Derek Fell is actually a avid non-fiction writer. He wrote a lot on painters, to be honest. He wrote extensively on paintings, painters, their lives, especially garden. I think there's a book called The Gardens, if I'm not wrong. But basically, he sort of has had a very deep dive into painting as a field, and he's researched extensively on many different painters of impressionism, and he's written extensively on how gardens, for example, are portrayed in all the different works of different sort of painters. So I think for him it sort of did come naturally because he's been writing so extensively about painting. And then in the introduction to this book, he states that he was surprised that a lot of people wrote about just Vincent and Theo and their letters that were exchanged, and they never thought about the women in Vincent's life because there were so many of them, and they never
They
thought
must have
about.
influenced him all along. I mean, why were they not considered important? They must have influenced him in so many ways all along his life, as it has been proved.
Because it's a men-run society, and men don't want to write about women.
Okay.
Friyana,
That is my best
Friyana,
guess.
I think the women have been written about.
They
Because
have
I mean,
been.
Not
yeah,
much.
I know about these women, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, it's quite famous. I
Mm.
think these women have been written about. At least in the case of this artist,
Mhm.
his women have been
Mm.
written about. And because in Van Gogh's case, I think his art became prominent purely because of Theo and Joe's efforts, right?
But that is what
They
I'm
are the
saying.
driving forces.
Yes. So it did become extremely famous because of Joe,
Mm.
120%. But that is the thing. So there is a lot known about Joe. There is a certain
Yes,
bit known about Will. Also, a bit more about his mother, for sure. But
yes.
even
And this
among the younger,
Margarita Carolina, this
yeah,
Margarita, I mean, the
yeah,
suicide attempt, and that's also quite famous, right?
yes. But
Hmm.
basically, nobody has tried to put his life through this perspective that the woman may have had a very major role in his
Influenced,
madness. There was no text which sort of very clearly stated that women had influenced the madness that Vincent went through. Also, I would
right?
like that sort of element was missing in the mentions of these women. Also, another fact is that Vincent, although you would like to blame the women for most of it, I feel like most of it comes from his uh, innate
From his
self of not
negative
being able to
interaction with
handle,
them.
not able to handle rejections, not able to
Mm.
handle what women who were standing for themselves and saying no, we don't want you in our lives. But him being him, he was very persistent. No, 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 it's the coy woman, and we must persevere, and those notions were at play. And then also, if you look at the genetic history of Vincent, they do state that there was madness running in his genes also, because out of the five siblings, you will see three commit suicide, one passes away of ill health and madness, certain extent of madness, and there's only one which we don't know much about. But basically, and his mother
Hmm.
had a severe depression. So you know that there was,
Oh,
innately
yes.
it was running in them. And then for Vincent to have gone through life with so many trigger points of rejection and abandonment, it sort of amplified to an extent that was not seen before. And that is when they sort of institutionalized him and legally declared him as mentally unfit.
So
Gautam, I
Derek
hope you got
Fell,
that
Sort of.
right, Gautam. It was not the women that drove him crazy, Gautam. He was born that way. Just wanted to clarify it for you.
No, no, no. He was born of a woman, right?
And the craziness came
Okay.
from her.
The woman was already driven crazy by her husband, I guess.
There are
Sorry,
some who are
Uma, you
born
were
of
saying
women, then they
something.
become divine.
Sorry, Uma, you had a comment to make.
Who I?
No,
made-
Uma, you had a comment to make.
Oh, yeah, I was asking. So actually, it's almost like he's doing research on only one aspect of this artist's life. That is the
Yes.
women who influenced him, or who who came in his way, and did they all really influence his painting as such? I'm a little curious about this writer.
Yeah, even
I mean, why he chose this particular aspect of uh, Vincent's life.
Oh, as far as the painting bit goes, I don't think the women had an influence on the
No,
painting.
they did not.
What does Derek Fell have to say about this? Nothing in general. I mean,
Nothing.
particular.
No, he does not
No.
mention any women's influence on his paintings. He
Okay.
majorly just talks about their influence on his life and on his emotions rather than the paintings.
Thanks. Thank you.
There is one book about his relationship with Gogh. And all his relationships have been like very intense, passionate, and manic.
I think I've read about this, about
It's
him
called
and
the
Gogi.
Yellow Room or something, and it
Yes.
is about his relationship with him, which is the reason why Gauguin also moved away from him. But they were very close friends in terms of their relationship with art, and they exchanged ideas and all that. He was mostly influenced by the Impressionists, but not the women in his life. But he was schizophrenic, I think. And that is what every relationship has gone into some level of manic behavior.
Just want to correct you there. So the initial diagnosis was that he was schizophrenic. However, later on, through further research and after, because at that time, manic depression and manic depression and bipolar disorders were not sort of invented, were not discovered. Sorry, they were not discovered at the time when Van Gogh was alive. So at
Not
that time,
recognized.
yeah, it was not recognized. So it was labeled under schizophrenia at the time.
Okay.
However, later on, as science sort of progressed, they have labeled it under manic depression and bipolar disorder.
So the women
Okay.
really were more like a muse, for his paintings.
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah, he
Prakash
says
is
so
trying to say?
himself a lot of the times that, if the woman is essential to live. I need a woman. I need the love. I need the attention. He keeps repeating these notions in his letters again and again. So you will see this constantly in the book.
Well, I think the book is a very valid thing, I mean, Van Gogh is a famous and popular painter. People will want to know about him. This is about, and the women. And it's a very popular subject, shall we say. It's the sort of thing that even a person who's not really interested in the artist or doesn't know much about his art would say, oh, it's quite a delicious subject, as it were, to get into. So I should imagine it would have many takers. People would automatically think, let me find out. Actually, I've always thought that Van Gogh and Gauguin had something in common in their art at a very superficial level, okay? I mean, the bright colors, the exotic islanders, Gauguin. Yeah. And it makes sense that they should have got on and been friends, because they must have had similar principles of art.
So Gauguin, again, after I think Vincent died, he went to the Tahitini Mountains as per Vincent's suggestion. And the paintings that he did there, a lot of the art historians believe that it has a lot of influence from Vincent's style of painting. And even after the fight, it's sort of like a reconciliation of their friendship, where he will go to this one place that Vincent mentioned, and he will draw these mountains and these places. And yeah, so and Gauguin has also had a very colorful life, which has been depicted in the book. But as that was not the main point, I did not go much into it. Yeah, Gauguin also has a very, very colorful life, which you would love to read about.
Oh, wow, yeah. So, if someone has written that book, we would look at it too. That's what I mean. It's a sort of popular and delicious and easy to be interested in kind of a topic.
Yes.
Little scandal mongering, which we all love to do.
I have to go.
Anybody
going
else? Any comments? Anything?
No, not at the moment.
Satish, you've been very quiet.
Gogh
Satish is
ran
still
off,
waking
didn't
up.
he? Gogh left
He-
his family and ran off to the Pacific Islands.
In fact, I ran after the other part of the house because Moini was overtaking everything.
No, I know
outside.
two
He had to
devices
be
cannot be in
independent.
the same room. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay, so shall we wrap
Yeah.
up this one?
Yeah.
Sunita?
Yeah.
And I'll just talk
Thank
about
you.
what's coming. Let's see. So now, 7th of July, we have Sheena Shahani talking about this book, which sounds very interesting, huh? Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. Doesn't that sound fascinating? Kafka on the Shore. I mean, when one writer, uses another for whatever purpose, I'm dying to know they bring Kafka into the story. So that's what we have. Now, on the 21st of July, Anika Madhura Peruma will talk about a streetcar named Desire by Tennessee Williams. So every now and then, I like to have some classic literature, to be discussed. So I'm really glad that this has come along. And so I have postponed my own presentation on lessons in chemistry to August. Okay. And by the way, I have volunteers for more presentations, but some of them have not indicated their dates. So please, those of you who have volunteered, please let me know the dates so that I can make the calendar and put it out there. So from my side, I would like to say that I enjoyed your presentation, Friyana. I like particularly, my goodness, first of all, I liked your choice of book. All right. As I said, there's something deliciously scandalous always about hearing about people and their affairs. So thank you for that. And the other is your presentation. How did you get those cartoonish characters of Van Gogh and all that? How did you do it?
There is an actual artist. She's an Iranian. They're an Iranian artist, and they create these live illustrations of Van Gogh in the digital art form. And I actually follow their Instagram a lot. So every single time they post something, I am in touch with what exact image they've posted. So the second I picked up this book, I knew I had to use their art. So it's just.
Oh yes, that's beautiful. Beautiful. I really admire the presentation.
Sunflowers have been included in most of them.
Yes,
That's
good
the
idea.
signature. That's the signature
Sunflowers.
painting. Okay, Sunita, over to you.
Yeah. So yes, that art was very, very beautiful. I thought you were going to say you got it from using Gen AI or something like that. But that's fabulous that there are artists who are doing that. It was quite lovely to see that in the presentation. But thank you so much, Friyana. This is an artist that we is much loved, and it was so interesting to listen to the story about his life and. All that he went through, quite tragic in terms of his health and his personality and things like that, but it was wonderful, very, very interesting to hear about. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Moini, and thank you everybody else, and we'll see you on 7th of July.
Bye.